The silence in the grand boardroom was deafening, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic tapping of my polished shoe on the rich carpet. Outside, the city shimmered under a cold, relentless rain, mirroring the chill that had settled deep within my bones. Arthur Green, the new CEO, his face a mask of carefully constructed disdain, cleared his throat. He had just finished explaining to the shocked faces of the board members how operational inefficiencies had led to a catastrophic production halt, costing Horizon Manufacturing millions and threatening its very future. His eyes, however, found mine, a flicker of raw panic behind the polished veneer. I simply smiled, a small, knowing smile that spoke volumes without a single word. He still didn't understand. He had called my experience redundant, 13 years of dedication, a lifetime of knowledge, tossed aside with a dismissive wave of his hand. But he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had forgotten who truly knew where every single hidden flaw lay, every single thread that held this vast, complex operation together. And now, as the company teetered on the brink, he was about to discover just how indispensable redundant could truly be. The bitter taste of injustice lingered, but it was slowly, gloriously, being replaced by the sweet anticipation of a justice long overdue. My name is Patricia Morgan, though everyone at Horizon Manufacturing knew me simply as Pat. For 13 unwavering years, I was the company's indispensable operations director, the quiet architect behind every successful production run, the one who understood every intricate detail of our manufacturing processes, from raw material sourcing to final product delivery. I was the very foundation upon which Horizon's reputation for quality was built. But my dedication meant nothing to Arthur Green, the ambitious, newly appointed CEO. With a casual disregard for my legacy, he had dismissed me, claiming my methods were outdated and my role redundant. What he failed to grasp, however, was that my dismissal wouldn't just affect me, it would unravel the very fabric of the company, revealing long-hidden truths that only I possessed. Truths that now served as the perfect instruments for a reckoning that was destined to arrive. My journey with Horizon Manufacturing began 13 years ago, a crisp autumn morning that still feels as clear as yesterday. The company then was a bustling, mid-sized enterprise, fiercely proud of its reputation for craftsmanship in precision components. I had joined as a production manager, fresh from a long stint troubleshooting supply chain issues in a sprawling automotive plant. I wasn't just looking for a job, I was looking for a challenge, a place where my deep-seated understanding of operational flow and my almost intuitive knack for spotting inefficiencies could truly make a difference. Horizon, with its intricate machinery and complex assembly lines, felt like the perfect fit. From the moment I stepped onto the factory floor, I knew I was home. The roar of the machines, the rhythmic clatter of assembly lines, the sharp scent of metal and oil, it was a symphony to my ears. I immersed myself completely, learning every single process, from the loading dock to the final quality control checks. I spent countless hours speaking with the line workers, understanding their challenges, observing every movement, every subtle pause that could signal a bottleneck. I quickly earned their respect, not just through my expertise, but through my willingness to get my hands dirty, to stand shoulder to shoulder with them on the toughest shifts. I didn't just manage, I participated, I understood. Within 5 years, I was promoted to operations director. It was a role I embraced with every fiber of my being. My responsibilities were vast and varied. I oversaw the entire production life cycle, managed the intricate dance of supply chain logistics, negotiated with suppliers, optimized factory layouts, and, crucially, maintained the rigorous quality control standards that were the hallmark of Horizon's success. I meticulously documented every process, every deviation, every solution. I built relationships with our key suppliers that went beyond mere contracts. They were built on mutual trust and a shared understanding of quality. I knew their strengths, their weaknesses, and even their occasional shortcuts. It was during one of my regular deep dive audits, about 6 years into my tenure, that I stumbled upon something that unsettled me deeply. We relied heavily on a particular supplier, Apex Metals, for a critical, high-grade alloy. Their prices were competitive, their deliveries prompt, and their materials generally seemed to meet our specifications. However, as I dug into historical quality reports, cross-referencing them with internal batch tests and unusual machinery where I noticed a pattern. There were subtle, recurring discrepancies in the alloy composition from Apex Metals. These were minor, almost imperceptible flaws, easily masked by subsequent processing, but they were there. More alarmingly, I discovered that some of the internal quality reports, the ones that went up the chain of command, seemed to show consistent compliance, even when my own raw data indicated otherwise. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible falsification of quality reports. I meticulously gathered the evidence, raw test results, corrected internal reports, and even a few cryptic email exchanges between a former procurement manager, who had since moved on, and an Apex Metals representative, hinting at flexibility in reporting. It was clear that Apex Metals was occasionally cutting corners, supplying a slightly inferior product, and someone within Horizon was deliberately covering it up to maintain lower costs and higher reported profits. This was a direct breach of our core value of uncompromising quality. My loyalty to Horizon ran deep. I loved this company, its people, its products. I believed in what we did. So, instead of immediately exposing the scandal, which would have shaken the company to its core and potentially destroyed my career along with others, I made a difficult decision. I meticulously documented everything, storing the evidence in a highly secure, encrypted file accessible only to me. Then, quietly and strategically, I began to shift our procurement strategy, diversifying our supplier base for that specific alloy, reducing our reliance on Apex Metals without raising immediate suspicion. I also implemented new, stricter internal testing protocols that were harder to circumvent. I genuinely hoped that this quiet shift would be enough, that the company would naturally drift away from unethical practices, and that these skeletons would remain buried, never needing to see the light of day. I continued to work diligently, ever vigilant, a silent guardian of Horizon's integrity. However, the corporate landscape began to change. Horizon Manufacturing, once a family-run business with a strong emphasis on core values, underwent a major acquisition. A large, faceless conglomerate absorbed us, bringing with it a new ethos, ruthless efficiency, aggressive cost-cutting, and a relentless focus on short-term quarterly gains. This shift ushered in a wave of new management, eager to impress the new owners with drastic changes. This is when Arthur Green entered the picture. Arthur was the epitome of the new corporate guard, sharp, impeccably dressed, fresh out of a top-tier business school with a resume that gleamed with buzzwords like lean operations, disruptive innovation, and synergistic optimization. He was installed as the new CEO, tasked with streamlining our operations. He toured the factory floor once, nodded politely at the long-serving employees, but his eyes glazed over at the sight of complex machinery and the details of the manufacturing process. He understood spreadsheets, not steel. To him, my 13 years of hands-on experience, my deep institutional knowledge, and my unwavering commitment to quality were liabilities. He saw me as a relic, resistant to modernization, an impediment to his grand plans for a new, efficient Horizon. He was blind to the intricate web of processes and relationships that kept the company alive, utterly convinced that abstract theories and aggressive cost-cutting were all that mattered. The Tuesday it happened, the factory hummed with its usual productive rhythm. I was on the packing line, troubleshooting a persistent glitch in a new automated system, when my assistant called. "Pat, Arthur wants to speak with you. 5 minutes. Please call him." It was unusual. Arthur rarely deigned to speak with anyone below a certain pay grade directly, preferring to communicate through layers of subordinates. This direct call felt ominous. I stepped away from the noisy machinery, found a quiet corner in my office, and dialed his private line. "Arthur," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. "Margaret," he began, using my formal name, which was itself a sign of trouble. His tone was smooth, almost condescendingly polite. "Thank you for calling. I've just completed a comprehensive review of our operational expenditures. And frankly, your role as operations director has been identified as a significant drain on our resources." I felt a cold dread begin to coil in my stomach. "A drain on resources, Arthur? With all due respect, we've just slashed our waste by 15% this quarter. We've optimized inventory rotation, reduced lead times by nearly a week. My team and I have saved this company millions by streamlining processes and preventing costly errors." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Saved what, Margaret?" "Saved costs that shouldn't have been there in the first place if the system was optimized from day one. We're eliminating these problems by implementing a complete overhaul, not by perpetually patching up inefficiencies. We've decided. Your role simply doesn't align with our new vision." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Doesn't align with your vision? My role? Arthur, this is madness. Who will understand the intricacies of every production line? Who will know our suppliers, their individual quirks, their true capabilities? Who will catch the subtle quality control issues before they snowball into a recall? This is a direct path to catastrophic quality failures and massive delays." He sighed, as if I were a particularly slow child. "Catastrophe, Margaret, is defined by inefficient expenditure. Our new external consultants will provide us with sufficient flexibility and agility. Your specialization, unfortunately, no longer fits our strategic priorities. Your last day will be 2 weeks from today." I sat there, gripping the phone, the world around me suddenly muted. 13 years. Every early morning, every late night, every missed family gathering, every problem solved, every crisis averted, all reduced to nothing. All erased by 6 dismissive words. He had dismissed my very essence, my profound understanding of how this company truly functioned, as a mere cost. He believed his abstract theories and spreadsheet projections were superior to tangible, on-the-ground experience. He had no idea. He had no idea that the old systems and outdated methods he so flippantly spoke of were the very things that kept Horizon from crumbling under the weight of its own hidden secrets. "All right, Arthur," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady, though a cold, hard resolve had begun to form within me. "Your role doesn't align with our vision, is that it? Well, sometimes what you consider inefficient is the only thing standing between you and utter disaster. I sincerely hope you don't live to regret this decision." I slowly hung up the phone. The shock began to recede, replaced by a chilling clarity. He wanted a new vision? He was about to get a vision of his own downfall, meticulously orchestrated by the very person he had just declared redundant. The true work, I realized, was just beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved through the factory, a ghost in my own domain. I performed my duties meticulously, training my replacements, a team of young, eager, but utterly inexperienced managers brought in by Arthur. I transferred files, explained processes, and offered advice, all with a calm, professional demeanor. I offered no resistance, no argument, no outward sign of the simmering fury within me. My colleagues, many of whom I had worked with for over a decade, were shocked and dismayed by my dismissal. They offered words of sympathy, shared quiet expressions of solidarity, but Arthur Green remained oblivious, convinced that my silent acceptance was a sign of my insignificance. He was already celebrating his victory, sending out triumphant internal memos about streamlined operations and cost-saving initiatives. He believed he had successfully purged the old guard and paved the way for his modern era. Meanwhile, away from the prying eyes of Horizon Manufacturing, my real work began. I meticulously organized all the evidence I had secretly gathered over the years. This included the original, unaltered quality test results for the high-grade alloy from Apex Metals, the falsified reports that had been submitted internally, and the incriminating email exchanges. I compiled detailed logs of critical bottlenecks in our production lines that only I knew how to circumvent, along with documentation of several near-miss quality control disasters that I had personally averted, often by unconventional means that bypass standard protocols. Everything was stored on a highly secure, encrypted external drive, accessible only by me. I also reactivated and reviewed my network of contacts outside the company, investigative journalists specializing in corporate malfeasance, former colleagues now working for industry regulators, and even a few disgruntled ex-employees who had witnessed the company's slow slide into unethical practices. I knew exactly who to call when the time was right. My aim was not just to expose Arthur's incompetence, but to unravel the deeper, more systemic corruption that he, in his blind pursuit of efficiency, was unwittingly about to bring to light. The immediate aftermath of my departure was marked by a false sense of calm. Arthur's new team, lacking my in-depth understanding of Horizon's intricate operations, began to implement their changes. They cut corners in procurement, reverting to cheaper, less reliable suppliers, including a heavier reliance on Apex Metals, whose past quality issues were now conveniently forgotten. They pushed for increased production quotas without adequately addressing the underlying limitations of the machinery or the training of the workforce. They celebrated small, superficial cost savings, oblivious to the deeper structural flaws they were creating. Within weeks, the first whispers of trouble began. Small, almost imperceptible defects started appearing in finished products. These were initially dismissed as minor glitches or expected teething problems of the new optimized system. However, the frequency of these defects began to increase. Production lines experienced unexpected downtimes as critical machinery, previously maintained by my proactive monitoring and obscure adjustments, began to fail more frequently. Shipping delays mounted as logistics became tangled without my direct oversight. My former colleagues, many of whom were struggling under the new, chaotic management, began to reach out to me, cautiously. They shared stories of frustration, of ignored warnings, of quality control reports being downplayed. I listened patiently, gathering more anecdotal evidence, confirming my predictions. Arthur Green, meanwhile, grew increasingly agitated. He held urgent meetings, demanding explanations for the unforeseen issues. His confident facade began to crack under the mounting pressure. He brought in expensive external consultants to diagnose the problems, but they, like his new team, lacked the institutional memory, the deep, almost subconscious understanding of Horizon's unique operational quirks that I possessed. They could identify symptoms, but they couldn't grasp the root causes. Each attempt they made to fix one problem seemed to inadvertently trigger another, creating a cascading effect of inefficiency and rising costs that far outstripped any initial savings. The company's reputation, built painstakingly over decades, began to show visible cracks as client complaints about product quality and delivery delays became more frequent. Yet, Arthur still refused to acknowledge that his optimization had been a colossal miscalculation. He blamed his subordinates, the legacy systems, anything but his own flawed judgment. The inevitable arrived with brutal force during the launch of Horizon's highly anticipated new flagship product. This product, touted as the pinnacle of our engineering and a testament to Arthur's modernization, was rushed through production, using the very cost-cutting measures and questionable suppliers that I had once discreetly avoided. The initial batches, shipped to key distributors and eagerly awaited by consumers, began to show catastrophic, widespread quality defects shortly after launch. Components failed prematurely, designs proved to be flawed, and, most damningly, the materials sourced from Apex Metals were found to be dangerously substandard, compromising the safety and integrity of the final product. It wasn't just a defect, it was a systemic failure of quality control. The outcry was immediate and deafening. News channels picked up the story, consumer advocacy groups issued warnings, and social media exploded with furious complaints. Horizon Manufacturing, once a symbol of reliability, was now synonymous with defective products and corporate negligence. The company was forced to issue a massive, unprecedented global product recall, costing millions and crippling its finances. The stock price plummeted, wiping out years of investor gains. Regulators launched a full-scale investigation, threatening astronomical fines and potential criminal charges for knowingly selling faulty products. Arthur Green was in a state of absolute panic. His once smooth hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, his voice a frantic bellow as he demanded solutions from his utterly helpless team. He tried to shift blame, to issue hollow apologies, but the scale of the disaster was too vast. He finally realized with dawning horror that his optimization had not just cost the company money, it had utterly destroyed its core business and reputation. He was trapped, cornered, with nowhere left to run. It was at this precise moment, as Horizon Manufacturing crumbled under the weight of its own internal failings, that I completed my final preparations. I finalized the comprehensive dossier of evidence, the original falsified quality reports, the email trails confirming illicit supplier dealings, detailed logs of Arthur's dismissive responses to internal warnings, and a timeline of how my dismissal directly correlated with the decline in product quality. I contacted the investigative journalist I had cultivated, now eager for the scoop of a lifetime. I also reached out to my contacts within the regulatory bodies, preparing them for the bombshell I was about to drop. My plan was no longer just about exposing Arthur. It was about ensuring that every hidden truth about Horizon Manufacturing, every deliberate cut corner, every lie, would finally see the light of day. The stage was set. The news broke like a cataclysmic event. It wasn't just a local story, it was a national scandal that reverberated through the entire industry. The headline, plastered across every major news outlet and trending furiously online, screamed, "Horizon Manufacturing implodes, massive product recall reveals decades of hidden quality fraud and executive cover UPS." The investigative piece, a meticulously researched exposé, laid bare the full, sickening truth. It detailed not only the catastrophic product recall and the underlying defects that stemmed directly from the use of substandard materials from Apex Metals, but also the years of systematic falsification of quality reports. It revealed how the company had knowingly compromised product integrity for the sake of profit, and, most damningly, it highlighted how Arthur Green's optimization drive, specifically his dismissal of my role, had directly paved the way for the catastrophic quality failures. My name, Patricia Morgan, the redundant operations director, was prominently featured as the expert who had repeatedly warned against these very issues, only to be ignored and cast aside. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Horizon Manufacturing stock plummeted further, becoming a penny stock. Lawsuits from furious consumers and disgruntled shareholders flooded in. Regulatory bodies, armed with the evidence I had provided, launched aggressive criminal investigations into the company's financial and quality reporting practices. The very existence of Horizon Manufacturing was hanging by a thread. Arthur Green, his face ashen and drawn, found himself in an emergency, closed-door board meeting. His usual smooth composure had evaporated, replaced by frantic desperation. He tried to deflect, to blame the legacy issues and unforeseen market conditions, but every argument he made crumbled under the weight of the irrefutable evidence that was now public. Board members, their faces etched with fury and betrayal, paced the room, their voices rising in heated accusations. And then, as the meeting reached its chaotic peak, a phone on the boardroom table rang. It was Arthur's direct line. The journalist, as planned, had called him, knowing he would be in the thick of it. Arthur, his hands trembling, answered, his voice barely a whisper. Arthur, my voice, calm and clear, resonated through the speakerphone, amplified for the entire boardroom to hear. This is Patricia Morgan, the very same whose role did not align with your vision. Arthur froze, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and dawning comprehension. He stood speechless, unable to utter a single sound. The board members, their own arguments momentarily forgotten, stared at Arthur, then at the speakerphone, their expressions a mix of shock and morbid curiosity. You thought you were cutting inefficient costs, I continued, my words slow and deliberate, each one a hammer blow. But what you actually did, Arthur, was cut the only person who knew where every single one of Horizon Manufacturing's darkest secrets were buried. Those very secrets, the ones about substandard materials, the falsified reports, the decades of compromised quality, they're now headline news, thanks to my misaligned efforts. I heard a sharp intake of breath from one of the board members. Arthur's face was an ashen mask of pure horror, his eyes darting frantically between the phone and the accusing stares of the board. Perhaps you should reconsider your vision of optimization, I said, my voice laced with a cold, cutting finality, because it has just cost you everything. Your career, Arthur, is over. The consequences of your arrogance are just beginning to unfold. I slowly hung up the phone. Arthur Green stood there, holding the dead receiver, his shoulders slumped in utter defeat. He looked at the board members, their faces a tableau of furious judgment. He understood. He hadn't just fired me. He had unwittingly handed me the shovel to unearth every buried skeleton, ensuring not only his own downfall, but the public humiliation of the entire company he claimed to be optimizing. He wanted a new vision? He had just received a very clear vision of his own ruined future. The fallout for Horizon Manufacturing was swift and absolute. Arthur Green was summarily fired that very day, his once promising career irrevocably shattered. The ongoing investigations by regulatory bodies led to crippling fines and criminal charges against several high-ranking executives implicated in the systemic quality fraud. The company's reputation was utterly destroyed, its stock a valueless commodity. Unable to withstand the crushing financial and reputational blows, Horizon Manufacturing declared bankruptcy within months, its remaining assets liquidated, and its name relegated to a case study in corporate malfeasance. The once proud manufacturer became a stark lesson in the perils of prioritizing short-term gains over integrity and experience. As for me, Patricia Pat Morgan, my name became a quiet legend within the manufacturing and operations sectors. I was inundated with offers from reputable companies eager to leverage my unparalleled expertise in quality control, supply chain management, and operational efficiency. I chose a different path, however. I established my own independent consultancy firm, specializing in ethical operational audits and crisis management. My services became highly sought after by companies looking to genuinely strengthen their internal processes and prevent the very type of corruption that had plagued Horizon. I found immense satisfaction in helping businesses truly thrive by valuing their long-serving employees and adhering to uncompromising quality standards. This entire ordeal solidified my belief that true value within an organization isn't always recognized by flashy titles or aggressive optimization strategies. It resides in the hands of those who meticulously build, maintain, and truly understand the intricacies of its operations. It lies in the quiet dedication of individuals who often work behind the scenes, ensuring quality and stability. Arthur Green had dismissed my 13 years of wisdom as redundant, believing his new and proven vision was superior. He thought he was simply shedding an old skin, but he was actually severing the very veins that kept the company alive. He learned too late that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you underestimate, especially when they hold all the strings.